That. All right. Cool. Hey, everyone. My name is Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today, and this is your weekly Space Hangout, the last one of the year for December 27th, 2013. And joining me this week, we've got Brian Koberlein from Rochester Institute of Technology. Hey, Brian. Haven't seen you in a while. It's awesome.
Yep.
Got Dave Dickinson, a.k.a. Astro Guys. Today he is a metals-based life form.
Metals in the astronomical sense, as in not hydrogen or helium-based.
So you're not full of hot air.
Exactly, or intelligent shade of the color blue or anything like that, no. So.
And my Astronomy Cast co-host, Dr. Pamela Gay. Hey, Pamela.
Hey!
It's been a while since you had you. This is great. So we've got sort of two agendas today. Since there's not a lot of big space news happening over the course of this last week. So we've got two things. One, we're going to do sort of a mini year in review. We're going to talk about a lot of the big stories that we really felt were important over the course of this year. And then two, we're going to talk about what's coming up. And Dave Dickinson has made a gigantic 101 things you should be watching for in 2014. So a bit of a preview, and he's going to sort of run through some of the highlights, and we will talk about some of the things that we're most interested in and excited about. So, let's kind of go through this. Now, before we kind of move through the big list, I want to remind you that this is an interactive experience, so if you want to talk to us, you absolutely can. There's a few ways to do it. Probably the best way now is to use the Q&A app, which I have enabled for this episode of the Space Hangout. So hopefully wherever you're seeing this, if you're seeing this on YouTube, if you're seeing this on Google+, if you're seeing this embedded somewhere on Universe Today, you should be able to access the Q&A app, and you can post some questions that you have or any comments that you might want to make to the panel. You can vote up the ones that you like, so that's pretty cool. There's other places as well. You can comment over on YouTube. You can comment on the event page on Google+. Man, this gets so complicated. I know. I apologize. Just use the Q&A app. You can also send a tweet. I don't know, what Space Hangout? Was that?
WSH.
WSH. Use the hashtag WSH. I know Pamela is watching that. So, but we'd be glad to sort of hear, and seriously, if there's something that we didn't think was a big story of the year and you think it is, pop it in the Q&A, and then I will sort of incorporate that into the show. So that's the housekeeping out of order. All right, so let's roll. So here, let's talk about some of the big events. So what do you guys think was the biggest event of the year?
The only event that got me out of bed was the Chelyabinsk meteor, but
I believe you got me out of bed as well. Yeah, you actually, I think you called me on the phone, sent me a text. It's very rare that we actually communicate in anything that isn't just like an email in prep for the show. But you actually sent me a text message like, "Hey, are you up? Something's happening in Russia."
That happened the day after Valentine's Day, and me and the wife just totally disconnected from the cyber world.
Oh,
so I didn't hear about it till that very next morning when I woke up. And the first ones I saw, I thought it's just your standard somebody saw a meteor, and then after I started seeing it like across Yahoo and all these other news networks, I realized this is really something big.
So, Brian, where were you when Chelyabinsk happened?
I was in class actually.
But it was like in the middle of the night.
It was the middle of the night, right?
But I didn't hear about it until the next morning.
Yeah, it was the same way. I didn't. Most of us on the East Coast. Yeah, most of us on the East Coast didn't hear about it till the morning of the 15th.
Yeah, I got a text message from noisy astronomer Nicole Gulucci, and she's like, "Something just happened in Russia. Get out of bed." And I went instantly awake because there was no meteor mentioned. It was just, you need to get out of bed because something happened in Russia, and that was definitely a more words were needed text.
Is it some kind of launch? Some kind of
or did it just implode? I don't know. So
there's a fireball in Russia.
Right.
Yeah.
So I hit Twitter, and that's what I see is fireball in Russia. It's like, okay, getting out of bed now. And what's cool is I speak Russian very badly, and so I'm watching all of the videos that were getting posted on YouTube, and I'm just giggling because the Russians are so nonplussed about the entire thing. They're like, oh, there's a light, and they just keep driving, and it was awesome.
Well, I mean, and we learned a bunch of things, right? We learned about a bit more about how big these objects can actually get and still detonate in the air. I think that was surprising how large this object ended up being. And we also learned just how many of these Russians have these dash cams. Like, nothing goes unseen in Russia now when you have all the dash cams going.
Yeah. You could almost see the string of events because it was the dash cams that caught all the video of the meteor.
Right.
Then everybody ran out with their cell phones and they caught the sound wave and the blast when it hit them. So you could kind of see the sequence of events going on that day as it happened.
And it let us see how much power comes from sound waves. All those windows getting blasted out. That was really surprising to me.
Well, that's the thing. You could just imagine. I just imagine the situation that just got played out thousands of times where a person sees this bright flash. Their whole room, because it's sort of in the morning in Russia, kind of dark. The whole room gets illuminated. And they're like, what? And they walk over, right? And they stand in front of their window. And they look around, and they look, and then they see this white plume in the sky. And they're like, what is that about? I don't know. And they're like looking around, they're going to call, boom, and then all their windows shred right in their faces. Yeah. And
remember that day, asteroid DA-14 was already coming by that day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And I've heard that there may be some ideas that those two objects were actually connected. Like
no.
They were radically
different
trajectories.
Totally different trajectories? Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I strike that from the record, please. So have we learned anything new from, since we reported, we went, we dedicated a whole show to the story. Have we learned anything new since then?
Meteorites are fragile?
We have a big blind spot toward the sun that we don't see things coming.
And they did find some of the meteorites that came down as a stony meteorite. They found it in a lake, and they've been doing some analysis, but I don't think anything interesting has come out of it.
I expect that at the March Lunar and Planetary Society conference we'll hear more. But what really caught me was the surviving meteorite stayed fairly intact after it ended up in the bottom of this lake, and they pull it out and it just crumbled into pieces. Yeah. And it's just sort of like these things are fragile and can yet destroy all the windows in a city.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just an amazing story. And it was interesting to see how much the government leapt into action and convened meetings, and I know Ed Liu and Rusty Schweikert from the B612 Foundation were busy fielding phone calls, and then I don't know if anything went anywhere.
We were lucky it came in at a very oblique angle, too.
Yeah.
If it had been at a steeper angle, it would have been a lot more damage. I was amazed people were injured, but nobody was killed. That was really lucky.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that was the big story, and but I think the next big story was a lot more disappointing, and this was your beat, David, which was Comet Ison.
Got to be Comet Ison. Yeah, we didn't have our Comet of the Century, unfortunately. It's Comet Ison went toward that other end of the spectrum and decided that it just wasn't going to perform after perihelion. It broke up and fell apart. But it was fun watching it during perihelion that day, on Thanksgiving Day, when we were all sitting there in between Thanksgiving dinner trying to watch what was going on SDO and SOHO and everything else. And we actually had a few good comets this year. We had Comet L4 Pan-STARRS this spring. We had Comet Lemon. We have Comet R1 Lovejoy right now. That's still performing. But we didn't get the big Hale-Bopp type comet that we were hoping for.
Well, for a while there was like five comets visible in the sky with binoculars? Like, it really was a year of the comets.
There was this fall. Yeah, this fall. There was a bunch. There was a few that actually went into, Comet Novetzke went into outburst. There was one of the Comet Linears went into outburst. So, yeah, we had a few good binocular comets. We just didn't, I was thinking this morning I could count on one hand the number of times I actually saw Comet Ison with binoculars or the naked eye before it went to perihelion. So we didn't get many good looks at it, unfortunately.
And what gets me is the history of how this came to be known as the Comet of the Century. It was originally, they thought that it had the same orbit as the Great Comet of 1680. It had a similar orbit, and so there was hope that this was related to the Great Comet of 1680, which was like daytime visible, looked like a tail coming off the sun. And once it got the press for being a potential comet of the century, everyone just went with it. So even after we realized not related, even after we realized kind of smaller than anticipated, people kept going with it's going to be the no, just no.
La 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 la! It's going to be the comet of the century.
I almost like comets like Hyakutake that just come up out of nowhere, and within weeks they're bright comets. They don't have the time to have that lead up to the big hype. They just come up and they're bright all of a sudden. So.
Now, Brian, did you get a chance to do any observing this year?
Not a whole lot. Not this year.
Yeah. So, it was a pretty terrible weather here. Although we haven't had rain, but it's just been clouds. But that's winter on the West Coast.
Yeah.
For us.
It's same here in Rochester.
And David David is dedicated, and he didn't have the best observing conditions either. So
no, we didn't. It was pretty cloudy down here most of the fall. So
yeah. Well, so there you go. So I've said this before, and I will say this again: is that the universe owes me a comet. The
universe owes you nothing.
No,
it's trying to kill you.
I know it's trying to kill me, but if I can have a comet first, that would be great.
Comet Ison's closest approach would have been yesterday, as a matter of fact. Was when it was due its closest approach to Earth.
Yeah.
So.
Now, are we gonna? I've heard as well that we're gonna interact maybe with the tail. There might be a meteor shower. Is there any?
There's some ideas January 10th into the middle of January that we may have a minor meteor shower, but the quadranid meteors pick up next month too, so I don't know how predicting those kind of meteor showers that aren't annual is really kind of a guessing game. So we'll just have to wait and see if we get any. And we're just talking dust particles. We're not going to get like fragments hailing down or anything like that. So
Mark Tatter says, "I'm currently selling T-shirts that say Comet Ison sucks." Yeah, I'll take one.
They always come in pairs, so we're due.
We are due. We had Hailbop and Hyakutake.
They always seem to come in pairs.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Voyager left the solar system.
Yes.
Or did it?
No.
It depends on what you mean.
Again.
So I know, Brian,
Across the heliopods.
you've reported on this quite a bit, right? On your blog. So what happened?
Voyager crossed what's known as a heliopause. That's where the solar wind kind of stops. It reaches its end of pressure, and you enter kind of the interstellar wind from the larger stars. But it's still got a long way to go to the Oort cloud or anything else. It's made it a long way, but it hasn't gone that far. So unfortunately, some people have said that's the edge of the solar system, but it's not really. It's the edge of where the solar wind
influence.
is. Yeah, the magnetic influence of the sun.
Right, and so now it's getting bombarded by the interstellar winds from the other stars.
Right.
But it's a fraction. It's not even through the Kuiper belt, right?
Right. No, not even close. I
believe it's 125 AU. I think.
Yeah, 125 AU, and
so that does put it beyond the edge of the Kuiper belt, because the Kuiper belt has that cliff. But it's still well inside of the Oort cloud.
Yeah.
The Oort cloud is like 10,000 AU, right?
10,000, 50,000, something like that.
Yeah, so it will literally be traveling for 30,000 years before it leaves the gravitational influence of the sun and gets into something else's gravitational influence. I mean, it's a long time.
A long time.
Do you think the RTG will hold out?
I think so. I think it's still. I think they're saying till 2020 at least. I mean, they got a plutonium's 70-something year half-life, something like that, 70 to 80, I think.
What I love is it's now 17 light hours away.
Yeah.
We can measure the distance in light hours. That's kind of awesome.
And it's using 8-track technology too.
Yeah.
So, literally.
Right.
Hey, never get rid of your magnetic tape. It's the only thing that's going to survive.
And so, I mean, how are the transmitters doing on it? Like, it's still at 17 hours away. We're still able to pick up a signal from it.
Yeah.
And still able to communicate and give it orders. And these RTGs are amazing. They, it's too bad they're maybe not gonna make more of them.
Yeah, we reported on that this year too.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we segue then into some really depressing news? And normally we bring Casey from the Planetary Society in to give us the bad news, but Pamela can do that as well because it really impacted her personally. So the government we had the government shut down, and all of the financing problems that happened this year. So what happened, Pamela?
Well, it was a double-edged sword of death. The first thing that affected us was government sequestration, which was across-the-board cuts to every organization in the U.S. government. And NASA has a lot of budgets it just can't cut. Spacecrafts have a finite cost to maintain. Facilities have a finite cost. International Space Station has a finite cost. And so when they had to find something to cut, well, the first things to go were funding for education, public outreach, new programs, and travel and conferences. So we saw the ability of researchers to apply for new monies for new programs go away. We saw existing programs get cut. We saw layoffs at some places. And I was on one rather terrifying telecon where one woman asked, so should I start looking for a new job, when we were talking about funding in education, communications, and public outreach. And there was a rather lengthy going nowhere response that boiled down to, I don't want to say yes, but yes. And then we had on the National Science Foundation side, they have finite things that have to be paid for, the Large Synoptic Survey Telescope, ALMA, these big programs coming along, keeping existing telescopes going. It looked for a while like Green Banks Telescope was going to get cut. And again, we saw cuts to major ways that we can apply for new funding. And the thing that I'm looking at the most painfully is the National Science Foundation is starting to more strictly enforce their guideline that people like me should only ask for 2 months of salary per year. I'm not sure where the other 10 months of salary are coming from right now, because NASA's canceled all of my programs. And National Science Foundation, for some programs, we're looking at 8% will get funded. In planetary science, going into 2014, we're looking at 30% of the new calls for funding going away. And what that means is 30% of the people who were relying on that will probably go away. We are at a stage where word from on high, as in Congress and the bureaucrats, is we won the space race. It's time to send all the researchers who aren't teaching faculty home. And they're setting up guidelines that 2 months a year, that's your summer salary when you're a teaching professor. Mm-hmm. So all those people working at places like Southwest Research Institute, at the Planetary Society, the Planetary Science Institute, at all of these non-teaching institutions, and all of the people like me who made the choice to dedicate our time to running research programs, well, they're legislating, laying us all off. And so we have to find alternative funding. And this is where you've seen me putting out calls to donate to cosmoquest.org. We are an organization that works to keep our researchers going through donations and to find ways to cut the costs on doing science by looking for volunteers. It's hard, but we're trying to keep things going. So
I mean, the government shutdown was particularly hard on NASA, because there was, like, I think it was pretty much the highest shutdown part of the entire government. There was like 97% of NASA employees were part of that shutdown. And were not allowed to work.
Well, it's because we're considered non-essential.
Yeah, and so literally it was just some people working on the MSL to make sure that it was still moving, and I think
Maven.
the Maven launch kept moving forward. There was the astronauts up that were on the space station at that time. So, but it's weird. I mean, you know, if you look at it purely from NASA and purely from the NSF, then it feels like that we're in very dark times for all of astronomy, and yet there is this. I mean, you mentioned this kind of double-edged sword. There's this sort of this other side of it, which is all the stuff that's happening in the private, and also with the Chinese. So why don't we sort of segue, which was all of the advancements that happened with SpaceX this year, right? SpaceX was the first private company to deliver to the space station this year.
Yeah.
And they were the first to do a commercial launch of satellites.
Yep.
And here what we're looking at is if you need a cargo truck, SpaceX has it.
Yeah.
If you need to pay your scientists sitting on the planet Earth, we're kind of out of luck. But if you need to get stuff into space, we can get it into space and then not pay for anyone to do anything with the data.
But hopefully, decreasing the launch costs will have some benefits on planetary science over time. We hope. So
orbital science has got into the game too. They're launching out of Wallops now, going up to the ISS as well this year.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there was the amazing the grasshopper tests.
Yes.
Right, with the frightened cows.
Next year we might see the Falcon 9 Heavy finally test too. I was looking ahead to what stories might be coming up, and that's one in 2014. We may finally, along with the Orion capsule, may finally get its flight as well.
I was fortunate enough to actually visit SpaceX this year, and it was an amazing place. I mean, it's just a real sense of that they're moving forward and that this is serious. And what's amazing is how they're all like, we're going to Mars. Like, we're absolutely going to Mars. Mars is the plan. And so I think a lot of people were fairly suspicious of Elon Musk's intentions. Like, is he just there? Is he just going to try and make money? No. He wants to send humans to Mars. No question.
It's this amazing time where you look at Spaceship Two had its first powered flight. We're looking towards potential actual space tourists going up next year, and so it feels very much like the great West Indian Trading Company of the future is coming into existence, where the oceans aren't the oceans of space in this case are going to be filled with the commercial craft that are carrying the new colonists and carrying goods and bringing back the minerals and other natural resources of, well, the other side of the great beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And then not just the Americans and not just SpaceX is in the game. There's a tremendous accomplishment from the Chinese this month, still sort of fresh in our mind, which is the Chang'e 3 lander dropping down onto the moon. Did you guys get a chance to watch some of that stuff live?
Yeah, I watched that live a few Saturdays ago. That was kind of cool. It's strange to see the moon behind a rover again instead of Mars. Like I said, I always have to tell myself it's not Mars now, because we're just used to seeing that Marscape behind any rover. That it's been a long time since we've been back to the surface of the moon, since 1976 when the Russians landed their last rover. So it's in that rover, incidentally, it just experienced its first lunar sunset for the next 2 weeks, so they powered it down for a bit. But yeah, it's an amazing accomplishment by the Chinese. They've sent a few orbiters around and past the moon, but this is the first time they've landed something on the moon. So it's kind of cool to watch what they're, and they really had a lot of unprecedented access to what they showed, because a lot of their missions tend to happen like the old Cold War missions, where we just hear there's a launch, but we don't see anything. This time, and when they did the Tiangong missions to their space station, we're getting to participate a little more. What we're used to now with the internet and everything.
And with the LADI mission, they actually got great data on how a spacecraft landing affects the atmosphere of the moon. And it wasn't just China jumping into the game. We also had the Indian Mars orbiter, and I'm going to mispronounce this, Mangalyaan, launched as well. So India's on its way to Mars. So it's now there's new players at the table.
Brian, what do you think is going to be happening with the Chinese space program from here on out? What do you anticipate?
I think they're very tenacious. I think we're going to see this more and more and more. I think gradually the United States may realize that they have a serious competitor now, and I think that's something that we haven't realized yet. Particularly with the sequester and the cutbacks. There's when Gravity came out, there was a lot of discussion where people that I had hung out with says China has a space station. That's science fiction, right? No, it's not.
No, it's not.
No, they really do have a space station, and people don't realize that. I think the lander was another thing where China has a lander. Yeah, they've been doing this for a while. And I think we're going to see that now that they've opened up too. They've got more in the media. I think we're going to see more of that. And I think hopefully it will kind of wake us up to the idea that space exploration is moving forward, it doesn't necessarily have to be us in the United States.
It got
Do you
so
think the
little
next? Do you think the next humans to set foot on the moon will be the Chinese?
I think it could be. I think it really depends on what we do. I think they will get to the moon. They will get humans on the moon. The question is whether or not we do as well.
I keep hearing from different sources that Tiangong 1 may be deorbited. They kept saying by the end of 2013, and we're at the end of 2013 now. So, but it's I think they're going to deorbit it very soon. The manned missions, crewed missions to it are over with.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's shift gears now and talk about some of the interesting planetary science discoveries that were made this year. And I think one of the most exciting and sort of surprising ones was the discovery that there were plumes on Europa, similar to what we've known about on Enceladus.
Mm-hmm.
And David, were you covering this? Were you following this one?
I read some of it. I was kind of on the sidelines of that, but that is kind of an amazing discovery. And the takeaway when I very first saw that, whenever I see something about Jupiter, I start thinking, wait a minute, we don't have anything orbiting Jupiter, so where is this data coming from? But apparently, I believe it was from Hubble data from observations of Europa.
And there was also some Galileo data, wasn't there? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, there was. Of course, Galileo was deorbited over a decade ago, but it's one takeaway thing from this is looking at it, you think, well, one thing we wonder about is how thick those ice sheets are, because Europa is on the short list of anywhere there could possibly be anything interesting chemically going on, and there possibly could be light elsewhere in our solar system. So we definitely want to get out there and take a look, but one of the engineering problems is how do you get through if it's kilometers thick? That's a non-trivial issue of how to get down to that European ocean. But if it's fracturing and jetting out water periodically, there may be things lying on the surface there just for us to go and see and look at. So that might put some impetus behind NASA or ESA to actually send a spacecraft to Europa, to just a targeted Europa mission is something they've wanted to do for some time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wonder, could you, we were talking about this before, like, could you send like a Stardust mission through these plumes and collect some of the particles and then bring them back to Earth and study them? And could you maybe find organics in there? Could you find even, bacterial evidence?
One problem with Europa is it gets exposed, like Io, closer into Jupiter, it gets exposed to a lot of radiation. Like the Juno mission that's going there in 2016 will go nowhere near that inner part of the Jehovan system there. So it's definitely would be a problem to explore. There was a good movie on Europa Report came out this summer that was actually pretty decent about possibilities of sending a manned mission to Europa.
I still haven't seen it. Have you guys seen it?
Yeah, I rented it online on Amazon Prime, so it was an independent release, so it didn't make it to a lot of theaters, but I did watch it online. It was kind of cool.
Cool. All right, so let's move on. What else we got? Oh, right, so there was the other part, which was the photograph that Cassini took of the whole of Saturn and included the Earth. And this is sort of the recreation of the pale blue dot. It was the day that the Earth smiled at Cassini. Okay. And so Pamela, were you? Did you take a picture of yourself for that?
So I have to admit, I was over in Portugal at the time, and we were like, okay, we need to remember. And then we went out for dinner, and when dinner was over, we were like, oh crud, we missed it. But I mean, it's a neat idea to get the whole world realizing that we really are nothing more than a small blip in the enormity of space. And I think the images coming back and continuing to get posted, and Astronomers Without Borders was really neat because they had people take pictures of themselves and then they mosaicked that together into a picture of Saturn. So you have Saturn taking a picture of the Earth and then the Earth taking pictures of themselves and making Saturn. And that was just a neat mirror of looking at it.
This was the first time we all knew in advance they were going to do a pale blue dot picture. So.
Yeah. Let's see if I can get a picture up. But yeah, I mean, I think we mentioned that I think they really did a good job of just handling the media on this. Like they did a great job of letting people know that this was going to be happening. They gave people the exact time and date, and then they took the picture, and then you got to see some rough versions of the picture, and then a final version of the picture, which was, of course, just absolutely stunning. Here we go. Let me see if
They did a big mosaic of everybody on the planet Earth too, where you zoomed in and you could see everybody's photo like pixelated on
Yeah,
the.
that was the Astronomers Without Borders.
Yeah, that was cool.
All right, here I got the picture here. All right. So I don't know if you guys can see this. Is that working? Yeah. If I can change the aspect ratio a bit on here.
I was surprised they could resolve the moon. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, that one surprised me
yeah,
too.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Well, that's good. And I hope that NASA and other agencies have really got a sense that. I know I'm just a talking Saturn right now. I hope they've got a real sense that the public is really excited and open to this kind of communication and being involved, and they are really, really interested in what's going on. And I think another classic example of this was all the stuff that Chris Hadfield did on the International Space Station this year. He really demonstrated what it was, what an astronaut could do in communicating science, in interacting with the public, in kind of being creative and quirky and musical, and I think maybe it's because he was Canadian that he didn't have this kind of restrictions.
No, that's true.
Well, yeah, they did say that. They said that he didn't have a lot of the same restrictions the NASA astronauts would have had, that and they enabled him to do the Space Oddity video and the things like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I think Chris Hadfield was one of the, sort of one of the best. I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but he was like just a great example of an astronaut, the kind of person who can be an astronaut. That he was both super smart, test pilot, technically competent, but also super creative and really willing to reach out to the public and help us, share in the experience. I got to talk to him, which was awesome. So,
the nature of things. The Canadian show did an awesome special on him, and Elizabeth Howell from Universe Today, she was actually in that too. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
We need more Canadians in space.
Volunteer. Awesome. All right, I think I'm almost running out. I know we need to switch to sort of what's coming up. So continuing the planetary conversation, which was sort of all of the work done by Curiosity this year. And of course, it launched back in 2012, landed on Mars, but it made some of its bigger discoveries this year as it really got moving. Now, I don't know, Brian, were you following some of the Curiosity stuff?
Not a whole lot. I got it all kind of secondhand because it's kind of outside my field.
I kind of liked it. It wasn't really they had a little bit of science involved in it, but they got some awesome transits of Mars's moons in front of the sun. I thought those were kind of cool. I did write on those, and they did use those to try to pinpoint Curiosity's position to try to refine its exact position, and to refine the orbits of the moons as well. So there was some science out of that, other than just being a pretty picture. But from an amateur astronomer's standpoint, I always think of what it would look like being on Mars to do astronomy. So I thought that was kind of cool. They released those photos.
One of the really big discoveries was that they found conglomerate rocks on the surface of Mars, and so these are these rocks all sort of cemented together in sand and silt, and then they fall apart. And you only get those kinds of rocks when you've had a river flowing for a long time, and the rocks can tumble up and jumble up, and then they sort of end up in some basin, and then silt gets on top of them, and it gets compacted down, and they get turned into these conglomerate rocks. We got tons of them around where I live, and that tells you that liquid water was acting on the surface of Mars for long periods of time, and this was sort of this was the thing that Curiosity was looking for. Was there conditions for life in the ancient past on Mars? And this was the smoking gun. There absolutely was the conditions. So really, Curiosity has fulfilled its major mission goal, which is to seek out this. Now it's just a matter of finding more evidence, different evidence, try to continue fine-tuning what it's looking for. So it was a terrific series of discoveries from Curiosity. Right. Okay. So one last story, which I think was a big story last year, which was Kepler. So we found lots of extrasolar planets, and we lost Kepler.
Yeah, and just at the stage when it was starting to be primed for finding Earth-sized things.
Yeah.
Because it takes time for it. It has to catch 3 transits before they're willing to say, yes, there's a planet. And it was just hitting its year 3. And so that means anything that it caught right off the bat, well, it's going to take time in some cases where you get unlucky and it starts looking the day after the transit or something worse.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time to add up all of those cycles, and just as it was hitting prime time, it borked.
Yep.
And why did it go bad? What could it possibly have been? What went wrong?
I don't know. What might it have been, Fraser?
Reaction wheels is what went wrong. No one listens to me. More
What
reaction
always
wheels.
goes wrong.
I think I read recently there's about 3,500 unconfirmed exoplanets still in the pipeline from Kepler. We just passed 1,000 confirmed this year. So and TESS is going up in a couple of years. That's going to be the next generation exoplanet satellite. So we may pass 10,000 by 2020.
That's a big news, because we're now, the number of planets that we know of that are confirmed are on the order of 1,000 now.
And researchers out at the Center for Astrophysics are suggesting that statistically 1 in 6 stars should have an Earth-sized planet, and it's looking like the vast majority of stars have planets.
Yeah, I was really expecting us to find that other Earth analog this year, like the Earth-sized planet located within the habitable zone of its star, and that didn't turn up.
Reaction wheels.
I know. But maybe no. But I mean, it's probably in the data. I mean, I'm sure that Earth-sized planet is in the data, and I'll bet you people working with Kepler have a few candidates that they would like to get confirmed better, and they're going to come back around and use some other method to really confirm their data. But I'll bet you they have it in there.
Although it's not an exoplanet hunter, Gaia may well find many more exoplanets as well.
There's certainly
more in the data. So.
Yeah, and so this was another big story. I mean, we haven't really seen the payoff yet, but the Europeans' Gaia spacecraft launched just a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, when you really wrap your head around what this spacecraft is going to do, it's going to map out like 1% of the entire galaxy. It's going to find like a million. Was it a 10 million stars? I mean, millions of stars. It's going to create a 3D map of a gigantic portion of the galaxy from our perspective. It's going to be amazing. So, and confirm a whole bunch of other amazing kinds of scientific discoveries as well. It's going to confirm Einstein. It's going to be looking for exoplanets.
Yeah,
it's going to be finding asteroids. It's going to be doing all kinds of stuff.
When you read about all the spin-off science they're expecting, like you said, with asteroids and comets and exoplanets, and there's going to be a lot of even variable stars and astroseismology, and there's a lot of spin-off science that's going to come out of this.
Between that and LSST, we're looking to move into a whole new level of statistically significant studies where we're going to go from having a couple dozen examples to a couple tens of thousands of examples.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, I think those are all the big stories that we had.
No, you're forgetting the best image of the entire year.
You got it. Space Frog.
Space Frog.
Go Frog.
I'm pretty sure Jason Major was the one that broke this to the world because Nancy had it for a while before she had to verify it. I remember.
Yeah. So here I can tell you the story, which was after the picture got taken, it was sort of hidden away on one of NASA's servers, and NASA wasn't publishing anything about it, and then somebody reached out and posted it on Reddit, I think. And posted on Reddit. Someone had dug through and found it and posted on Reddit. And then I think I found it on. Someone had emailed me and said, "Check out this picture." And then I fired it off to Nancy and said, "Do you think this is real?" And she goes, "I don't know. Let me talk to NASA." And then so she had her story ready, talking about like what was going on, and then we waited for a couple of days to get a confirmation from NASA, and then they got back to us and said, "Yeah, indeed it is," and then we so then we posted a story on it, and then NASA after that sort of updated their server and actually provided some press information on the frog, and it was good. I mean, I think I can see why originally they were not super keen to post a lot of information about it, because that frog is dead.
Yes.
That is a dead frog.
Well, it's like the bat that was caught a couple of years
Yeah.
ago on one of the
Yeah.
solid rocket engines, and
Yeah.
but I have to say this is my favorite space-related image of the year. I can't say why. It's just it is. It's this emotional. That's awesome.
But
was
then
an
Jason
inspiration
went
to us
on.
all.
Yeah, Jason went on to find all kinds of stuff. He found space armadillos, and there was
Yeah,
Mhm.
once you start looking for animals in launches, they're everywhere apparently.
and there's space bat, and there's and then there was the cows being harassed by the grasshopper.
That was cool. The video I saw, that was cool.
Yeah. So just there is an effect on the animals in the space flight industry. So good. No, totally agree, Pamela. That's a great picture. So that's it. You know what? That was a great year for space and astronomy for 2013. Now let's move on to the future, and we've got maybe about 12 more minutes left, and also I'm going to want to answer some questions. So before we move on, actually, let's get some questions going here. Wow, Dave, your article is bogging down my computer trying to open it up. It's so lengthy.
Yeah, I tried to curb it. I tried to curb it at 3,000 words. So.
Okay. So just related to the Chelyabinsk meteor, Mark Tatter asks, if that thing had come straight down and impacted the Earth, what would have happened? Tunguska?
Tunguska,
Yeah.
basically.
I think it was smaller than Tunguska, but it would have been still not good, especially over a major city.
Knock out a pretty big town with it.
Yeah. Brian Hudson says the anticlimax of the year was Ison. Yeah, that's true. Todd Weller says, speaking of rovers, how worried should we be about the Curiosity's wheel damage?
That is unclear right now. They did discover it's not so much weird wheel damage as one of the wheels is wearing down faster than it was anticipated, and they can see this in its ability to roll and other sensor data. It's telling us that the Mars surface is gnarlier than anticipated, and we knew this a little bit from Opportunity, which now has one of its wheels up. Mars is a rough place. Sand is nasty. Dust is nasty. But she's still going.
So Guido Bibra notes that right now the ISS spacewalk is still going, where they're attaching the new HD Earth camera.
Yeah.
So this is the Earth Cam, and actually they're a Vancouver-based company.
Yeah, I was just watching that before we got over to the Space Hangout. I was watching that most of the day.
That is so cool.
It's kind of cool.
All right, so let's see. Is there anything else? Any other questions here? Daniel Yount says, I had read that laser gyros can replace mechanical gyros with the mass of the photons shifting the weight.
It's not quite enough momentum yet for big spacecraft.
But you could use solar power to fire lasers, and the laser would generate a little bit of momentum.
If you have something really tiny. Yeah. We're talking like smaller than a CanSat right now.
Yeah.
Neat.
There were a lot of CubeSats deployed this year, and PhoneSats too. So.
Yeah.
Christine Grosvenor says that the Europa Report is streaming on Netflix now. So there you go.
Oh, cool. Very cool. I'll have to go see it, go watch it again.
I'm sure only for the United States.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's a bunch of the big questions. All right, so David, now I recommend everyone goes to Universe Today on the homepage right now. There are the 101 astronomical events for 2014. But David, give us some highlights. What are going to be some big events that are going to be happening in 2014?
Out of those 101, I would distill it down. There are 4 eclipses next year. We're not having a total lunar or total solar eclipse next year. Ironically, in 2014 we're having the minimal number of eclipses that can occur in a year, which is 4, which are 2 lunar and 2 solar. Both the solars are an annular and a partial. But we're having 2 lunar eclipses, probably the best one of the best events coming up in April 15th, right on U.S. Tax Day. We're having a total lunar eclipse. It's going to be visible from North America. And we're having another total lunar eclipse visible on October 8th that will be visible from most of North America as well. So we're getting 2 lunar eclipses, even though we're not getting any. We're getting a good partial solar eclipse on October 23rd. It's going to be 81% partial over North America, so that's pretty decent. So we're going to have some really good conjunctions. Jupiter and Venus are going to be very close on August 18th. They're going to be 15 arc minutes apart, which is like a half the diameter of the full moon in the morning sky. And what's going to be kind of cool is the crescent moon on October 23rd is going to join them, so we're going to kind of get a skewed smiley face eclipse, or not eclipse, but a conjunction. We're going to get 2 stars, and the crescent moon kind of turns sideways, not quite in an emoticon kind of shape, unfortunately. We had one like that a few years ago.
It's a drunk
that's going to be
emoticon.
pretty cool. Pretty much. That'd be a cool thing to call it, actually. It's a drunk emoticon.
Drunk emoticon. Aren't they all?
There's going to be some good meteor showers. Unfortunately, the good dependable ones like the Perseids and the Geminids, the moon is going to be interfering at that time when those peak. But the Quaternids come on January 3rd, coming right up next weekend. And those usually have a zenithal hourly rate of 100 or better. And the moon is just going to be past new. So that may be the best meteor shower of the year. If we don't get any of these spurious ones from Ison that people talk about, or there's another meteor shower from a comet 209P Linear on May 24th, that there's some discussion that we may get a surreptitious meteor shower from that one. One of the more bizarre events that's happening next year, but it's going to pass right over New York City, is an occultation of a bright star by an asteroid that a lot of people are going to see. Asteroid 163 Aragon is going to occult the star Regulus. So you'll be able to see this with the naked eye. Really? This is going to be on March 20th, on the very early morning hours of March 20th. There's already a web page dedicated to it. It's gonna be bigger in the news as we get closer to it. We haven't had a naked eye star occulted by an asteroid. There's these kind of occultations are going on. There are hundreds of them every year, but most of them only advanced amateurs are going after them, and they happen in remote places. There was one by a star in Libra a few years ago that was 3rd magnitude, but it was in Mali. Mali was undergoing civil unrest at the time, and there was no expeditions out to try to catch it, so nobody that I've heard of saw it.
And what's cool about these events is because asteroids are potato-shaped, different places are able to see different length transits. Yes. And this allows us to map out the shape of the asteroid by getting observers all along the transit line.
Amateurs have discovered moons around asteroids just by seeing extra wink outs when the star goes out.
And so, how long will it take? Like, if we live in New York, which one of us does, how long would we be watching?
Right along the Grays line, the maximum is 14 seconds, so it's not going to be long.
So the star will just fade away for 14 seconds and come back,
and then come back out.
Yeah, that'll be pretty neat. Wow.
We need to try and do a live hangout about that.
That would be kind of cool. And you probably could conceivably get, if somebody had the right kind of, I could image Regulus even with my system. Of course, it's not going to happen here in Florida, but somebody could conceivably stream that. We have a comet approaching Mars next year. There was a lot of flurry around the internet earlier this year when comet 2013 A1 Siding Springs was discovered to come very close to Mars next year on October 19th. And there was even some discussion about it impacting, which it's pretty much been ruled out now. But we are definitely going to have, you'll be able to see this comet with binoculars. It'll be 7th magnitude next October, and it'll be kind of cool to see it next to Mars, about 7 arc minutes away from Mars at that time. Mars is reaching opposition next year, too. So. And
its dust trail could be picked up by MAVEN's instrumentation, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. MAVEN is getting there just in time. MAVEN in India's Mars orbiter as well. So, in Curiosity, there'll probably be a campaign to try to see it from the surface of Mars. And there's talk about possibly there might even be a meteor shower connected with this over Mars to be visible from Mars. So, it's we don't have any bright comets coming into the U.S. sky or into the skies in 2014, but there's a few binocular comets next year. So that we know of. There's always that possibility another bright Hyakutake could come out of nowhere. That would be kind of cool if it did. There's also a triple shadow transit on the cloud tops of Jupiter on June 3rd. We had one this year. Europe is going to get this one. So that'll be kind of interesting. Those are pretty rare. They're usually only once every few years you get a triple shadow transit. So
we're gonna get some landings, some I guess, or some Maven should arrive at Mars. It's not gonna land, but
Rosetta is going to deploy its lander toward. That'd probably be the big encounter of the year later in November. I'm just reading up on that.
They're waking Rosetta up on January 20th, and the European Space Agency is actually asking for people to submit videos telling Rosetta to wake up, and those will be selected off of their Facebook page on January 20th.
Cool.
That is awesome. Wake up, Rosetta. Time to get up. Come on, buddy. Yeah, and it's going to harpoon the comet, which I think is great because the gravity's so low, you can't really land on it, so it's going to harpoon it to hold on to it. I think that is the mission.
That'll be a first,
that I'm most excited, and that's in November. It's going to start gearing up. So
yeah.
Anything else,
launched
David?
in 2004.
I know
it for
it's
the top events. I mean, there's lots more going on. There's occultations of Saturn and occultations of Venus. Ceres and Vista are going to be very close to each other next year, and of course all the big events. We got further like total solar eclipse in 2017, and those things coming further down the road. But It's weird that 2017 almost seems like it's not that far away now.
2017. This is going to be the good one.
So I think one of the things that we need to note here is the majority of the awesome stories that we pointed out were related to space exploration and planetary science. The things that we're most looking forward to are generally related to planetary science. I'm an astrophysicist. I'm biased away from planetary. But this is where the big discoveries are happening right now, and that's where the government is doing funding cuts. So there's something screwed up with our priorities right now as a country. And I say that as an individual speaking from my spare bedroom, not as someone who works with NASA. So as an individual, I'd like to point out that the coolest science we're seeing comes from planetary, and we need to invest in keeping these discoveries going into the future.
I think what's amazing about this list that you put together, Dave, is this is just the stuff that we can predict.
Yes.
I mean, when you look at the list of stuff that we thought was big and important for the last year, really only half of those things we could have predicted. The other half were total surprises.
This is all observational astronomy drawn from about 24 different sources that I'm looking at daily. And what I like is I now have 101 stories to write for Universe Today next year. So
great. I'll get my pocketbook open.
I've done this for a few years on my own site, and this gives me the research material to just start pulling down each week, writing about different astronomy events that are going to happen. So.
All right, that sounds great. Cool. Well, I think why don't we wrap this up? Hey, thanks to everybody for watching and supporting us over the course of this last year. We really appreciate it. It's been great to see a lot of familiar names and a lot of new names, and I know you sort of worked through all of our technical issues. We've tried to sort of keep the Hangout going. I want a big thanks to Nicole Gallucci, who's been the producer for the Weekly Space Hangout. She wasn't able to make it this week, but she is often here and has really been the backbone of this whole effort and has been sort of herding the cats and sort of keeping the energy level high and commenting with all the people while the shows are going on. She's absolutely critical, and it's been a real pleasure to have her helping us out. And also to Susan Murph, who joined the Universe Today team a couple of months ago and has been really helping me stay organized and get all of the stuff happening that we're doing. So a few people behind the scenes. But hey, and thanks to the people who showed up today. We really appreciate it. It's great. We never know who's going to show up, except David. David always shows up, but we don't know who's going to be here, and it's always a treat to see when people are able to make it. I know, Brian, you've got a break from your classes, so it's a rare event. I guess till the summer.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I won't have classes scheduled during this time in spring term. I don't know my schedule yet, but.
Great. So, Brian, where can people find out more about you?
You can find me on Google+, like at daily posts, and then also on Twitter. It's @BrianCoberline.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note you are blogging every day. You are literally running your own space news website through Google+, and so every day you're either reporting something interesting or you're explaining some concept in space and astronomy, and your posts are just terrific. I'm often directing people your way, so please keep that up. We really appreciate it. David, where do we find out more?
See, this week I was active on my own site, Astroguys with a Z, Listosaur, Canada.com, and Universe Today, and I'm writing a big post on the Quadranid meteors. Will probably be the very first event post of 2014 that I'll be covering next week for Universe Today.
Oh, great. Pamela, where do we find out more?
Professionally, you can find me at astronomycast.com, at cosmoquest.org, and I speak my own mind at starstrider.com and as Starstrider on Twitter.
And, of course, I am the publisher of Universe Today, and we just posted an interview that we had with Dr. Ian O'Neill when we met with him down at the YouTube Space LA, so you can find that on the Universe Today channel. And we actually just posted our 60-second Space Explainer video for the year. So the goal is we're putting out 2 a week, and so far we've been sticking to our schedule. So we've got lots more coming into the new year. So
and we will have Astronomy Cast coming on Monday as the next hangout.
Oh, cool.
Yep. The next Astronomy Cast, it's going to be part 2 of building telescopes, where we go into the serious business of building telescopes as opposed to the toys and kits, which we handled last week. One other thing is that our good friends over at Deep Astronomy, Tony Darnell and team, are going to be doing a very similar year in review wrap-up for their channel. That's going to be a live hangout, and that's starting at 5 o'clock. And so definitely go take a look for the Deep Astronomy channel, and I may be showing up for that. So thanks guys for helping me get my ideas straight for the next hangout. So once again, thanks to everyone for watching. For 2013, we really appreciate it, and we look forward to bringing you more space news and information into 2014. We really seriously could not do this without all of you and your support, and we really appreciate it. So thanks everyone, and we'll see you all next year.
Yeah.
Load. I don't know.
So there's a fireball in Russia.
Right.
Yeah.
So I hit Twitter, and that's what I see is fireball in Russia. It's like, okay, getting out of bed now. And what's cool is I speak Russian very badly, and so I'm watching all of the videos that were getting posted on YouTube, and I'm just giggling because the Russians are so nonplussed about the entire thing. They're like, oh, there's a light, and they just keep driving, and it was awesome.
Well, I mean, and we learned a bunch of things, right? We learned about a bit more about how big these objects can actually get and still detonate in the air. I think that was surprising how large this object ended up being. And we also learned just how many of these Russians have these dash cams. Like, nothing goes unseen in Russia now when you have all these dash cams going.
Yeah. You could almost see the string of events because it was the dash cams that caught all the video of the meteor.
Right.
Then everybody ran out with their cell phones and they caught the sound wave and the blast when it hit them. So you could kind of see the sequence of events going on that day as it happened.
And it let us see how much power comes from sound waves. All those windows getting blasted out. That was really surprising to me.
Well, that's the thing. You could just imagine. I just imagine the situation that just got played out thousands of times where a person sees this bright flash. Their whole room, because it's sort of in the morning in Russia, kind of dark, the whole room gets illuminated. And they're like, what? And they walk over, right, and they stand in front of their window, and they look around, and they look, and then they see this white plume in the sky. And they're like, what is that about? I don't know. And they're like looking around, they're going to call, boom, and then all their windows shred right in their faces. Yeah. And
remember that day, asteroid DA-14 was already coming by that day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And I've heard that there may be some ideas that those two objects were actually connected. Like
no.
They were radically
different trajectories.
Totally different trajectories. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I strike that from the record, please. So have we learned anything new from, since we reported, we dedicated a whole show to the story. Have we learned anything new since then?
Meteorites are fragile?
We have a big blind spot toward the sun that we don't see things coming.
And they did find some of the meteorites that came down as a stony meteorite. They found it in a lake. And they've been doing some analysis, but I don't think anything interesting has come out of it.
I expect that at the March Lunar and Planetary Society conference we'll hear more. But what really caught me was the surviving meteorite stayed fairly intact.
You that this is an interactive experience, so if you want to talk to us, you absolutely can. There's a few ways to do it. Probably the best way now is to use the Q&A app, which I have enabled for this episode of the Space Hangout. So hopefully wherever you're seeing this, if you're seeing this on YouTube, if you're seeing this on Google+, if you're seeing this embedded somewhere on Universe Today, you should be able to access the Q&A app, and you can post some questions that you have or any comments that you might want to make to the panel. You can vote up the ones that you like, so that's pretty cool. There's other places as well. You can comment over on YouTube. You can comment on the event page on Google+. Man, this gets so complicated. I know. I apologize. Just use the Q&A app. You can also send a tweet. I don't know, what Space Hangout? Was that?
WSH.
WSH. Use the hashtag WSH. I know Pamela is watching that. So, but we'd be glad to sort of hear, and seriously, if there's something that we didn't think was a big story of the year and you think it is, pop it in the Q&A, and then I will sort of incorporate that into the show. So that's the housekeeping out of order. All right, so let's roll. So here, let's talk about some of the big events. So what do you guys think was the biggest event of the year?
The only event that got me out of bed was the Chelyabinsk meteor, but
I believe you got me out of bed as that. All right, cool. Hey everyone, my name is Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today, and this is your weekly Space Hangout, the last one of the year for December 27th, 2013. And joining me this week, we've got Brian Koberlein from Rochester Institute of Technology. Hey, Brian. Haven't seen you in a while. It's awesome.
Yep.
Got Dave Dickinson, a.k.a. Astro Guys. Today he is a metals-based life form.
Metals in the astronomical sense, as in not hydrogen or helium-based.
So you're not full of hot air.
Exactly, or intelligence shade of the color blue or anything like that, no. So.
And my Astronomy Cast co-host, Dr. Pamela Gay. Hey, Pamela.
Hey!
It's been a while since we had you. This is great. So we've got sort of two agendas today, since there's not a lot of big space news happening over the course of this last week. So we've got two things. One, we're going to do sort of a mini year in review. We're going to talk about a lot of the big stories that we really felt were important over the course of this year. And then two, we're going to talk about what's coming up. And Dave Dickinson has made a gigantic 101 things you should be watching for in 2014. So a bit of a preview, and he's going to sort of run through some of the highlights, and we will talk about some of the things that we're most interested in and excited about. So, let's kind of go through this. Now, before we kind of move through the big list, I want to remind you actually, I think you called me on the phone, sent me a text. It's very rare that we actually communicate in anything that isn't just like an email in prep for the show. But you actually sent me a text message like, "Hey, are you up? Something's happening in Russia."
That happened the day after Valentine's Day, and me and the wife just totally disconnected from the cyber world.
Oh,
so I didn't hear about it till that very next morning when I woke up. And the first ones I saw, I thought it's just your standard somebody saw a meteor. And then after I started seeing it like across Yahoo and all these other news networks, I realized this is really something big.
So, Brian, where were you when Chelyabinsk happened?
I was in class, actually.
But it was like in the middle of the night.
It was the middle of the night, right?
But I didn't hear about it until the next morning.
Yeah, it was the same way. I didn't. Most of us on the East Coast. Yeah, most of us on the East Coast didn't hear about it till the morning of the 15th.
Yeah, I got a text message from noisy astronomer Nicole Gulucci, and she's like, "Something just happened in Russia. Get out of bed." And I went instantly awake because there was no like meteor mentioned. It was just, you need to get out of bed because something happened in Russia, and that was definitely a more words were needed text.
Is it some kind of launch? Some kind of
or did it just like